Chosen one, pause for a moment and listen carefully, because something in the unseen has just shifted around your life, and heaven does not interrupt ordinary moments without purpose. The fact that these words have reached you now is not coincidence, it is alignment. It is the quiet signal that a season you have walked through with patience and endurance is beginning to turn. Anointed one. For a long time, your journey may have felt strangely quiet. Doors did not open when you expected. Connections that looked promising dissolved without explanation. At times, it seemed as if heaven was silent while your heart carried questions no one else could see. But the silence was never abandonment. It was preparation. Scripture reminds us in the book of Ecclesiastes that there is a time for every purpose under heaven, and the moment when something sacred begins to unfold rarely arrives with noise. It arrives with alignment. Chosen one. Heaven has been arranging details far beyond what your eyes could track. The waiting shaped you, the solitude refined you, and now a divine partnership prepared in the unseen is beginning to move toward your path. If this message resonates in your spirit, consider subscribing so you do not miss the words meant to guide you in this season. Because what heaven is revealing next will help you recognize the moment when destiny and connection finally meet. Oh, chosen one. Listen carefully to what your spirit has already been sensing. What is unfolding around your life right now is not emotional coincidence, and it is not the result of sudden desire. This moment has been forming quietly, patiently, long before you became aware of it. Heaven does not rush what carries destiny. When something sacred approaches your life, it moves with precision. It moves with timing. It moves with a calm authority that does not need to announce itself loudly. That is why what is coming toward you will not feel like chaos or confusion. It will feel like recognition. There is a difference between excitement and alignment. Excitement is loud. It rushes. It demands immediate answers. Alignment, however, arrives with stillness. It settles into your spirit in a way that feels deeper than emotion. The kind of connection heaven prepares does not require you to chase it or prove yourself worthy of it. Instead, it arrives at the moment when your life has been shaped enough to sustain it. As it is written in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3, the vision waits for its appointed time, and when that time arrives, it does not struggle to appear. It breathes. Anointed. 1. Many people misunderstand the seasons of silence that come before divine fulfillment. When heaven grows quiet, the human mind often assumes something has gone wrong. But silence in the spirit is rarely absence. More often, it is concealment. It is protection. It is the sacred covering that keeps something precious hidden until the right moment arrives. You have lived inside one of those seasons longer than you expected. There were days when you carried promises quietly, while nothing around you confirmed them. You stood in faith when applause never came. You continued believing when the visible evidence refused to cooperate. That kind of endurance leaves a mark on a person. It changes the way you see people. It changes the way you listen to your own spirit. It changes the way you move through relationships. I have seen this transformation in my own life, and I recognize the signs when I see them in someone else. When a person has been refined by waiting, they begin to move differently. They become slower to speak, but quicker to discern. They stop being impressed by intensity and begin paying attention to peace. The noise that once looked attractive loses its power, and the quiet signals of alignment begin to stand out clearly. Chosen one. This is not accidental. The transformation you experienced during the waiting was not simply about patience, it was about preparation. Heaven was shaping you into someone who could carry the kind of partnership that does not collapse under pressure. Many people pray for love, but few understand the weight that true partnership carries. A relationship aligned with purpose does more than comfort the heart. It touches identity. It influences calling. It shapes future decisions. If that kind of connection arrives before a person is ready, it can create dependence instead of destiny. God knew this about you. That is why certain doors never opened when you expected them to. At the time, it may have felt like rejection or delay, but heaven was protecting something larger than your immediate feelings. You were being preserved. The partner being prepared for you was also walking through their own process of refinement. Different path, different story, but the same fire shaping both lives. Heaven does not unite two people who still need rescuing. Heaven unites two people who have learned how to stand. I remember a season in my own journey when I thought connection was the answer to the loneliness I felt. I believed that if the right person simply appeared, everything inside me would settle. But when I look back now, I can see clearly that I was not ready to steward what I was asking for. My identity was still forming. My sense of direction was still unstable. Had that relationship arrived then, it would have been built on need instead of purpose. Only after stillness, loss, and surrender did clarity begin to take shape. And that clarity changes the way love feels. Anointed One. The partnership heaven is sending toward your life will not arrive with the chaos you may have seen before. It will not require you to abandon your peace in order to keep it alive. Instead, it will strengthen the peace that is already within you. When something is truly aligned, it does not create inner conflict. It creates recognition. There will be a familiarity that your spirit understands before your mind has time to explain it. This is how heaven speaks through relationships, not with pressure, not with urgency, but with confirmation that settles deeply into the soul. And here is something important you must understand right now, chosen one. The moment you pressed play on this message, something began aligning in ways you could never have forced through effort. Paths are shifting quietly. Schedules are adjusting. Conversations that have not yet happened are already being prepared in the unseen. Heaven is orchestrating details that human planning could never arrange. But this orchestration does not require your control. It requires your alignment. The waiting season trained you for this moment more than you realize. During that time, you learned how to hear God without needing constant reassurance. You learned how to remain steady when answers did not arrive quickly. You learned how to sit with discomfort without abandoning your faith. Those lessons are not small. They are the very qualities that allow covenant to survive when emotions fluctuate. Chosen one. There is also a reason you did not settle when it would have been easier to compromise. There were moments when the world encouraged you to accept connections that looked good on the surface but felt wrong in your spirit. Something inside you resisted. Even when that resistance felt lonely, you held your ground. That decision mattered more than you know. Heaven honors obedience like that. Because what is being released into your life now will not drain your strength. It will multiply it. This partnership will not distract you from your calling. It will clarify it. The person being aligned with your path will recognize the purpose within you instead of competing with it. So do not rush ahead of what heaven is arranging. Stay grounded. Stay present. Let trust replace anticipation. The waiting season is closing, not because you grew tired of it, but because you grew ready for what it was preparing you to receive. And chosen one, what is unfolding now, is not emotional timing. It is spiritual positioning. Chosen one, spiritual positioning rarely looks dramatic while it is happening. Many people expect divine movement to feel like sudden excitement or overwhelming signs from heaven. But most of the time, the shift begins quietly inside you. It shows up as a strange calm where anxiety once lived. It appears as a deeper clarity about what belongs in your life and what no longer does. You may have noticed recently that certain people, conversations, or environments simply do not hold the same attraction they once did. That change is not random. It is the evidence that refinement has finished its work. Anointed One, when heaven prepares to bring something sacred into your life, it first clears the space around you. Not violently, not dramatically, but precisely. God removes what has completed its assignment. Some relationships were meant to walk beside you only long enough to teach you discernment. Some connections existed to strengthen your boundaries. Others were mirrors that revealed parts of yourself you had to heal before stepping into the next chapter. When their purpose was finished, heaven quietly closed the door. At the time, it may have felt confusing. You may have wondered why certain connections faded, even though nothing obvious went wrong. But heaven does not remove things carelessly. It removes them because what is coming next requires room to land. Divine partnership cannot grow in a crowded environment filled with unfinished attachments or lingering emotional noise. It requires space, clean space, peaceful space, chosen. One of the clearest signs that you are approaching alignment is that your inner world becomes simpler, not empty but settled. Decisions feel clearer. Discernment becomes sharper. You begin trusting your spirit in ways you never could before. Instead of questioning every sign you feel, an inner knowing guiding your steps. When heaven moves, confusion begins to fade. Noise decreases. What remains is clarity, and the person being aligned with your life will recognize that clarity immediately. This is important for you to understand. The connection that is approaching your path will not require performance. You will not need to become someone else in order to hold their attention. You will not feel pressure to impress them or secure their affection. They will meet you where you actually are, not where you pretend to be. That is the difference between attraction and alignment. Attraction often relies on chemistry and intensity. Alignment, however, recognizes truth. Heaven does not rush introductions. It arranges encounters. The meeting itself may appear ordinary from the outside. It might happen in a moment that seems completely normal to everyone else around you. But inside, something deeper will register. Your spirit will recognize a sense of familiarity that cannot be explained through logic alone. Not obsession, not urgency. Just a calm awareness that something fits. This is how divine connections reveal themselves. God does not shout through chaos. He confirms through peace. You might even notice something else in the days leading up to this encounter. Life may feel unusually quiet. Fewer distractions, fewer emotional highs and lows, fewer situations demanding your attention. That stillness is not stagnation. It is focus settling into place. Just before heaven reveals something new, it often reduces the noise around you so that your spirit can recognize the moment clearly. The same God who walked with you through seasons of solitude is now guiding you toward union. Nothing about this process is rushed. Nothing about it is forced. Heaven is not catching up with your life. Heaven has always been on time. Anointed One, understand this deeply. You are not being prepared for love anymore. That season has already done its work. What is happening now is positioning. Positioning is the stage where heaven begins aligning the circumstances around your life so that when the right person appears, the foundation is already stable. I remember the moment when I realized this truth in my own journey. There was a time when I believed love would arrive through dramatic signs or overwhelming emotion. Instead, when the right alignment finally approached, everything felt steady, calm, almost surprisingly normal. But inside that calm was something far deeper than excitement. It was recognition. My spirit understood before my mind had time to analyze it. That is how heaven often works. Chosen. 1. The season you are entering is not about emotional rescue. Divine partnership does not arrive to fill emptiness. It arrives to multiply wholeness. Heaven waited until you learned how to stand without leaning, how to breathe without constant reassurance, how to remain at peace even when answers were delayed. Those lessons were not punishment. They were preparation. And the partner being prepared for you has walked through their own version of that same process. Different circumstances, different challenges, but the same fire refining their character. Heaven synchronizes endurance before it synchronizes encounter. Two lives are being stabilized separately so that when they meet, they do not collapse under expectation. That is why purpose-driven love feels calm instead of dramatic. Chosen one. What is forming now will not require you to chase it, convince it, or hold it together through effort. It will arrive whole because you learned how to remain whole while waiting. And that lesson is exactly what makes the next season of your life possible. Chosen one. There is a pattern that often appears just before heaven releases something sacred into a person's life. It is not always visible at first, but when you recognize it, everything begins to make sense. This pattern is what many people misunderstand as disruption, but in truth, it is unveiling. Before the authentic arrives, heaven allows everything that cannot travel with you into the next season to reveal itself clearly. You may have already started noticing this. Conversations from the past may have resurfaced unexpectedly. People you thought had completely moved on might suddenly appear again with familiar words or familiar energy. Opportunities that once tempted you may return and look almost identical to how they looked before. At first this can feel confusing, but it is not confusion. It is contrast. Anointed one. Heaven sometimes allows the past to briefly reappear so you can see how much you have changed. What once felt magnetic now feels heavy. What once seemed exciting now feels misaligned. That shift is not loss, it is discernment finally operating at full strength. God does this because He does not want you entering divine partnership with unresolved attachments, not emotional ones, not spiritual ones, not identity ones. Before something real arrives, the counterfeit often makes one last appearance, not to trap you, but to reveal you. I remember a moment in my own life when something I once desperately prayed for suddenly returned. Years earlier, I believed that opportunity would complete my life. I thought if it ever came back, I would immediately run toward it. But when it finally appeared again, something surprising happened. Instead of excitement, I felt clarity. Instead of urgency, I felt peace in saying no. That moment taught me something powerful. Growth does not always feel like gaining something new. Sometimes it feels like calmly walking away from what once controlled you. Chosen one. That quiet strength is exactly what heaven has been developing in you. The waiting sharpened your awareness. You learned how to listen beneath words. You learned how to sense energy before believing appearances. That kind of discernment cannot be taught through theory. It is developed through experience. It is forged in moments where your spirit had to learn the difference between something that looks good and something that actually carries peace. Scripture reminds us to test the spirits, as written in the book of 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. That wisdom is not about suspicion, it is about awareness. It is about recognizing the difference between something that pressures your emotions and something that steadies your spirit. and the love heaven is sending toward you will never require you to abandon peace in order to keep it alive. Anointed one love that comes from God respects your pace. It honors your boundaries. It does not rush you into emotional decisions before clarity has time to settle. Anything that demands urgency, pressure, or fear is not aligned with heaven's signature, no matter how familiar it appears. You may also notice something else during this season. Walking away from the wrong things has become easier. Situations that once required long explanations now end quietly. You do not feel the same need to argue, prove your perspective, or hold on to connections that no longer fit your spirit. That change is not indifference, it is authority. Your identity is no longer tied to being chosen by others. You now understand something deeper: you were chosen by God first. When that truth settles into a person's life, attachment begins to loosen its grip. You stop needing validation to confirm your worth. You stop forcing relationships to survive when your spirit already knows they have completed their purpose. This is one of the clearest signs that someone has reached emotional and spiritual maturity. Chosen one, do not mourn what falls away during this season. What leaves now cannot follow you into what is coming next. Divine partnership requires space. It requires an atmosphere that is not crowded by unresolved expectations or emotional leftovers from previous chapters. God is not taking anything from you. He is clearing the room. When the authentic arrives, it must arrive into stillness, not competition. And there is something else heaven has been developing inside you that will matter deeply in the next chapter of your life. You are no longer impressed by words alone. In the past, promises and emotional intensity might have been enough to capture your attention, but now you observe patterns, you notice consistency, you sense intention. This is maturity. The person being aligned with your life will not need to persuade you that they belong there. Their actions will confirm it naturally over time. Divine alignment always proves itself through stability. It does not depend on dramatic displays of emotion. Chosen one, there is a reason this discernment developed before the meeting instead of after it. If love had arrived earlier, you might have confused intensity for purpose. But now, your spirit recognizes something greater than intensity. It recognizes peace as power. That is why this season may feel quieter than you expected. Heaven does its most important work in silence. So remain present here. Remain grounded in what your spirit already knows. You are not being tested to see if you are worthy of what is coming. You are being shown that you are ready to receive it. And when the counterfeit fades completely, the authentic will finally have room to appear. Chosen one. There is a part of the journey that very few people talk about openly. It is not the fiery beginning where faith feels alive and exciting, and it is not the visible fulfillment where everything finally makes sense. It is the long middle season, the quiet stretch, where nothing appears wrong yet nothing has fully arrived either. This is where endurance is built. In this place, faith no longer depends on emotion. It becomes a decision. You wake up, go about your responsibilities, treat people with kindness, remain faithful in small moments, and trust that heaven is still working even when life looks ordinary. That kind of consistency may not look dramatic to the outside world, but in the spirit realm, it carries immense weight. Anointed. 1. Quiet fatigue is very different from despair. Despair shouts loudly. It convinces you that everything is falling apart. But quiet fatigue simply sighs. It looks like continuing to do the right thing even when you feel uninspired. It feels like believing without fresh confirmation. It feels like choosing peace even when answers remain hidden. If you recognize yourself in that description, it does not mean your faith is weak. It means your faith has matured. You have moved beyond the stage where you need constant reassurance in order to remain aligned. Heaven often does its deepest work during seasons that feel calm and uneventful. Chosen one. I understand this season well because I have lived through it myself. There was a time when the promise in my heart felt settled, yet nothing in my hands seemed to change. My prayers became quieter. I stopped asking for dramatic signs and began asking only for the strength to remain faithful. Looking back now, I can see that those quiet days were not wasted. They were shaping something inside me that excitement alone could never produce. That shaping is happening in you right now. Scripture speaks often about those who endure, not those who rush ahead, not those who burn brightly for a moment and disappear, but those who remain. Endurance is faith that has learned to breathe slowly. It is showing up in ordinary moments with an extraordinary trust that timing is still being held by God. This is why your progress may sometimes feel invisible. Endurance rarely announces itself. It simply stays. Chosen one, during seasons like this, the enemy rarely attacks with obvious destruction. Instead, he whispers small questions that slowly erode confidence. You may have heard those whispers before. Is anything really happening? Did you misunderstand God? Should this have happened already? These thoughts are not loud accusations. They are subtle erosions. They attempt to wear down the certainty that once felt strong in your spirit. But the answer to those whispers is not louder faith. The answer is steadier faith, the kind that returns again and again to what has already been revealed. Anointed one. You do not need a new word from heaven in this season. You need to remember the last true one. Faith under pressure often looks unimpressive from the outside. It looks like going to work each day while quietly trusting God with your future. It looks like being patient with people who do not understand your timing. It looks like holding your ground without feeling the need to defend yourself constantly. These small acts may appear ordinary, but they are protecting the promise while it matures. Chosen one, there is quiet strength in repetition. There is strength in praying the same simple prayer each day. There is strength in returning to the same truth, even when nothing dramatic seems to be happening. I have learned through experience that faith is rarely sustained by constant revelation. It is sustained by remembering what has already been revealed and refusing to let it erode. Sometimes what steadies the soul most is not another explanation, but a simple reminder repeated until it becomes part of your breathing. And here is the reminder you must hold on to right now. Heaven has not slowed down because you are tired. Heaven has adjusted the pace because what is being built must last. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not missing anything meant for you. You are walking at the speed that protects the promise. Chosen one. Waiting does not mean passivity. Waiting means remaining aligned without forcing movement. It means trusting that God is arranging circumstances beyond your reach. It means allowing your character to remain intact while life quietly catches up to what heaven has already spoken. Many people abandon the process during this stage, not because they stop believing, but because they stop remaining. They attempt to force progress when patience would have preserved everything. But you did something different. You remained. Unanointed one. There will still be days in this season that feel completely ordinary. No sudden breakthroughs, no dramatic signs, just routine. But do not mistake routine for stagnation. Seeds grow underground without announcing their progress. Roots deepen where no one can see them. If growth required constant visibility, nothing lasting would survive. What is forming now is protected precisely because it is quiet and chosen one. Every moment you choose patience over pressure, trust over control, and alignment over urgency, something stabilizes in the unseen. That stability is preparing the ground for what heaven is about to release into your life. Chosen one. Something else is happening during this quiet season that you may not fully see yet. While you have been learning how to remain steady, heaven has also been stabilizing another life at the same time. The partner being aligned with your path is walking through their own version of refinement. Their days may look ordinary on the surface just as yours have. They are also learning how to remain faithful without knowing exactly when the promise will appear. This is why the season has felt so internal for you. Two separate journeys are being shaped in parallel. Heaven often synchronizes endurance before it synchronizes encounter. If two lives meet before they are stable, expectation can crush what was meant to grow. But when both people have learned how to stand on their own, the meeting does not create pressure. It creates partnership. Chosen one. You are not required to manufacture excitement in order to prove that you believe something is coming. You are not required to constantly feel certain in order to remain aligned. Faith that endures does not announce itself with noise, it simply continues. Heaven responds to that kind of faith with extraordinary precision. Timing is not accidental, it is protected. Anointed one, let this season be what it is. Do not treat it like a test you must escape. Treat it like strengthening that must be completed. You are closer than you realize, not because emotions are rising or signs are increasing, but because you have remained steady when others might have rushed ahead or turned back. That steadiness is the mark of readiness. Chosen. One, stay here for a moment and breathe deeply. Remain grounded in the life you are living right now. The next chapter forming around you does not require urgency. It requires endurance, and endurance has already been proven in you. There is a moment in every divine process where heaven shifts its focus. At first, the season is about shaping you, but eventually the process begins to move toward positioning you. This shift rarely arrives with visible signals. There is no sudden announcement, no dramatic warning that everything is about to change. Instead, the evidence appears internally. You may notice a deeper calm within your spirit. A quiet confidence begins to replace the tension you once carried. Instead of bracing yourself for disappointment, you feel strangely settled. This is not relief. This is readiness quietly taking its place inside your life. Anointed one positioning often feels anticlimactic. Many people expect the moment before breakthrough to look like fireworks, but heaven rarely moves that way. Instead of overwhelming emotion, you receive stability. Instead of acceleration, you experience clarity. God stabilizes you before he moves you forward. I remember a season when I believed nothing meaningful was happening around my life. Days passed quietly. Opportunities seemed unchanged. Yet later, I realized something profound. Everything necessary had already been arranged. The foundation had been completed before the visible movement began. Heaven rarely announces alignment. It reveals it through peace. Chosen one, you may have noticed something subtle happening in the way you respond to life. Situations that once triggered urgency now pass through you without holding your attention. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. You do not chase reassurance from people who cannot see what God is doing in your life. This is not detachment, this is authority. Authority does not hurry because it knows it will not be overlooked. Anointed One, heaven has been teaching you how to carry weight without strain. That ability will matter deeply in the next season of your life. The partner being aligned with you will not need someone who reacts to every emotional shift. They will need someone who can remain steady when circumstances fluctuate. And that steadiness is exactly what has been forming inside you. Positioning also brings separation, but not in a dramatic way. Certain environments may no longer feel comfortable. Conversations that once felt engaging now seem thin. Situations that used to energize you may begin draining your spirit more quickly than before. This is not judgment. It is alignment refining your awareness. When God prepares to bring someone into your life who carries purpose alongside you, He adjusts your tolerance for distraction. You begin noticing what supports your peace and what quietly erodes it. Chosen one, you are not becoming difficult. You are becoming precise. And precision matters because divine partnership cannot survive chaos. It requires clarity. It requires two people who understand when to move and when to wait. Two people who do not need to prove themselves constantly. Two people who can sit together in silence without feeling anxious. That capacity is being finalized in you now. Anointed One, you might feel a strange mixture of calm and quiet anticipation. Not excitement, not fear, but a gentle alertness. That sensation is spiritual awareness waking up. You are no longer searching for signs everywhere. Instead, you are simply noticing alignment as it appears. The future is no longer pulling you forward with urgency. It is slowly meeting you where you already stand. And that is one of the clearest signs that heaven is positioning you for something that will not collapse when it arrives. Chosen one. When heaven begins positioning you this precisely, another lesson quietly appears. It is not a lesson about faith anymore. That part of the journey has already been proven in you. The lesson now is restraint. This stage is subtle and many people miss it because it does not look like struggle on the outside. In fact, it often appears when your heart finally feels ready. You may notice something inside you saying, "I am prepared now. I understand more clearly than before. I could step forward if the opportunity appeared." And that awareness is true. You have grown, you have matured. But readiness does not always mean permission. Sometimes readiness is the very moment when heaven asks you to remain still. Anointed. One, divine timing is not protected by effort. It is protected by obedience. There is a difference between being capable of moving and being instructed to move. Many strong people stumble here, not because they lack discipline, but because they confuse clarity with urgency. When your spirit becomes stable and your heart becomes ready, the natural impulse is to act. But heaven sometimes asks you to stand at the edge of the promise, without stepping forward too soon. I remember a season where everything inside me felt aligned. My direction was clear. My confidence had returned. I thought the door ahead of me would finally open, yet it remained closed. At the time, I believed something had gone wrong. Later, I realized something profound. God was not delaying me. He was aligning details far beyond what I could see. If I had forced movement in that moment, I would have disrupted what heaven was assembling quietly. Chosen one. This is the kind of discernment that develops after long seasons of refinement. Earlier in your journey, discernment helped you avoid the wrong things. It helped you recognize unhealthy patterns, misleading opportunities, and relationships that could not sustain your purpose. But the discernment you are learning now operates on a deeper level. Now you're learning how to recognize the difference between good timing and God's timing. Anointed one. Those two things are not always the same. Something can appear good, healthy, and even promising, yet still arrive slightly before the moment heaven intended. Moving too early in those situations does not destroy the promise entirely, but it can weaken the foundation it was meant to stand on. That is why stillness becomes so important at this stage. Stillness requires humility. It requires trusting that heaven can see angles you cannot see. You may feel the urge to prepare more, initiate more, or organize circumstances to make things happen faster. The mind often disguises these impulses as responsibility. It says, I should take action. I should help the process move forward. But chosen one control is not the same as stewardship. Sometimes control is simply anxiety wearing purpose as a mask. Heaven has already accounted for preparation. What remains now is protection. God is not asking you to do nothing. He is asking you to remain aligned without grasping for control over outcomes. Notice how different this waiting feels from earlier seasons of your life. Before, waiting felt heavy and uncertain. You wondered whether anything would change at all. But now the waiting carries a different atmosphere. It is watchful rather than desperate. It feels full rather than empty. That is the waiting of someone who knows the promise is real. This kind of faith does not try to prove itself through constant motion. It rests. It observes. It remains open. Anointed one restraint is a spiritual language that heaven understands clearly. When you choose patience, even though you are capable of rushing forward, you communicate something powerful in the spirit. You demonstrate that you trust the timing more than your own instincts. You demonstrate that you value sustainability more than speed. Chosen one divine partnership carries tremendous weight. It touches your future, your calling, your identity, and the legacy that will follow your life. God does not release that kind of responsibility to someone who still feels the need to test every possibility. He releases it to someone who can hold anticipation calmly. You may notice moments when excitement briefly rises in your heart and then settles again. Do not interpret that settling as losing faith. It is actually faith regulating itself. Just as an experienced runner controls their pace near the finish line, you are learning not to surge too early. Heaven is not impressed by emotional intensity. Heaven honors endurance guided by wisdom. Anointed one. Something else is happening quietly around you as well. Your environment is being rearranged, not dramatically but carefully. Schedules shift. Paths intersect differently. Conversations appear and disappear without clear explanation. At times it may feel unpredictable, but this is not instability. This is coordination. God is aligning circumstances around your life so that when the meeting occurs, it will not require adjustment afterward. The moment will already fit into place naturally. That level of orchestration requires patience far deeper than human planning can understand. Chosen one. Your role in this stage is simpler than your mind wants it to be. Remain steady, remain receptive, remain obedient to what you already know. Do not manufacture movement. Do not test doors that are not opening yet. Because when the right door appears, it will not resist you. It will recognize you. Chosen one. There is another shift that begins to unfold as you move closer to the moment heaven has prepared. It is subtle at first, but once you recognize it, you realize something important is happening. The many directions that once competed for your attention begin to fade. Life starts to simplify. The scattered possibilities that once filled your mind slowly fall away until only what truly aligns with your spirit remains. This stage is what I often call convergence, anointed one. Convergence is not dramatic. It rarely arrives with excitement or visible celebration. Instead, it appears as focus. Your energy no longer feels pulled in 10 different directions. The decisions that once felt complicated now feel surprisingly simple. What used to confuse you begins to make sense without much effort. This is heaven narrowing the path. Before two lives can meet in divine partnership, distractions must be reduced. God removes excess so that the moment of connection arrives into clarity rather than chaos. When too many options remain open, the heart struggles to recognize what is real, but when the path becomes clear, recognition becomes natural. You may have noticed this happening already. Certain opportunities that once seemed important are quietly losing their appeal. Some conversations no longer hold the same energy they once did. Even the way you think about your future may have changed. Instead of imagining endless possibilities, your vision has become more focused. You are not entertaining every what-if anymore. You are simply living from what feels aligned. Chosen one, that is convergence, doing its work. I remember a point in my own life where this kind of shift happened without warning. For a long time, I kept analyzing timelines, wondering when the right moment would appear. I watched for signs everywhere, trying to interpret every change as a possible signal from heaven. But eventually, something surprising happened. I stopped counting time altogether, not because I gave up hope, but because the timeline no longer controlled my peace. And that was the moment when things began to move. Anointed One convergence also sharpens your discernment in a new way. Earlier in your journey, discernment developed through pain. You learned what misalignment looked like because you experienced it. But now, discernment operates through peace instead of pain. You recognize alignment quickly because it feels steady rather than confusing. You do not overanalyze signals anymore. You simply notice what carries peace and what does not. This is maturity in the spirit. Heaven doesn't bring covenant into chaos. It brings it into clarity. Chosen one, you may also notice that urgency has quietly disappeared from your life. You are not in a hurry to arrive somewhere anymore. The sense of rushing that once filled your heart has softened. Instead of pushing forward, you are simply present. This is not passivity. It is confidence rooted in trust. When someone truly believes that what God has prepared will arrive, they stop trying to force the timeline. They begin living with the calm expectation that the moment will appear exactly when it should. Anointed One convergence also prepares something deeper than timing. It prepares recognition. When two people are aligned by heaven, their spirits recognize each other in a way that cannot be manufactured. This recognition does not depend on dramatic emotions or impressive circumstances. It happens through resonance. Your spirit senses a familiarity that feels deeper than explanation. But this kind of recognition cannot happen if either life is still scattered. That is why convergence is necessary. God tunes both lives to the same frequency before allowing them to intersect. When that tuning is complete, the meeting does not feel forced. It feels natural. It feels as if two paths that were always meant to cross have finally arrived at the same place. Chosen. Another sign of convergence is the way you experience solitude now. Being alone no longer feels heavy. Silence no longer feels uncomfortable. You have learned how to be present with yourself without needing constant stimulation. This kind of inner stability is one of the clearest indicators that someone is ready for partnership. Because partnership built on purpose requires two people who can remain whole even when nothing exciting is happening. Anointed One, heaven values that kind of readiness deeply. You may also notice doors closing now without much resistance. Situations that once lingered in uncertainty suddenly resolve themselves. Not dramatically, but cleanly. What does not belong simply falls away. This is convergence protecting the moment that is approaching. What is not aligned cannot remain. What is not part of the meeting cannot continue occupying space in your life. Chosen one. The more significant the meeting, the fewer variables heaven allows to remain. God removes what could interfere so that when the encounter finally happens, it unfolds without unnecessary complications. You might feel a strange stillness growing inside you now, almost like the quiet moment before a tide begins to turn. This stillness is not emptiness, it is containment. Everything is being held in place until the exact moment arrives. Heaven does not rush convergence, heaven synchronizes it. And, chosen one, you are standing closer to that synchronization than you realize. Chosen one. When convergence reaches its final stage, something remarkable begins to happen inside your spirit. The questions that once filled your mind grow quieter, not because every detail has been explained, but because trust has taken their place. You are no longer searching for constant reassurance. You are simply present in the life unfolding before you. This quiet confidence is one of the clearest signs that you are standing near the threshold of what heaven has been preparing. The threshold is not always dramatic. Many people imagine it as a sudden moment where everything changes instantly. But more often, it feels like a calm awareness that you are standing exactly where you are supposed to be. The urgency that once pushed you forward has disappeared. The pressure to figure everything out has faded. In its place, there is a steady certainty that the next step will reveal itself at the right time. Anointed one. This is the posture heaven looks for just before something sacred appears, when curiosity no longer carries anxiety, when anticipation no longer carries pressure, when faith has matured beyond the need for constant proof. You may not even realize when this shift happened. At some point along the journey, you crossed out of striving without noticing it. The old habit of trying to control every outcome slowly dissolved. The need to interpret every moment for hidden meaning softened. Instead of managing the promise, you began allowing it to unfold. And what is allowed moves very differently from what is chased. Chosen. One divine encounters are not collisions, they are recognitions. They occur when two lives have been shaped enough to meet without disturbing each other's foundation. When the meeting comes, it will not feel overwhelming or chaotic. There will be no inner debate about whether it is right. Instead, there will be a calm awareness that something fits naturally. Your breath will slow. Your spirit will recognize before your mind has time to analyze. This is how alignment speaks. Anything that rushes you is not from God. Anything that steadies you carries His signature. Anointed one. There is also a humility that comes with arriving at this moment. Not pride, not triumph, but gratitude. You remember how long the road behind you has been. You remember who you were when the journey first began. And instead of needing recognition from others, you feel reverence for the process that shaped you. The loneliness begins to make sense. The restraint you practiced reveals its purpose. The endurance that once felt exhausting becomes the very strength that supports what is now appearing in your life. Nothing was wasted, not a single delay, not a single quiet season, not a single moment where you wondered whether heaven had forgotten you. God does not waste lives. He refines them until they can carry weight without breaking. Chosen one. The meeting that is approaching your life is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a chapter built on a foundation that has already been strengthened. You are not stepping into something fragile. You are stepping into something that has been prepared carefully on both sides. That preparation is why it will feel quiet, it will feel stable, it will feel sustainable. Anointed One, from this point forward, your role is no longer to wait in uncertainty. Your role is simply to remain who you have become. Remain honest, remain grounded, remain attentive to the peace that has been guiding you through every stage of this journey. What has been written will unfold without strain because it was never powered by urgency. It has always been carried by alignment. Chosen One, stand in this moment without rushing ahead. Let the next step reveal itself naturally. The life that is forming around you does not require performance. It requires presence. And when the person heaven has prepared finally steps into your path, you will understand something that once felt mysterious. You will understand why certain relationships ended. You will understand why some opportunities never opened. You will understand why the seasons of silence lasted longer than you expected. Every part of the journey was positioning you for a meeting that could only happen when both lives were ready to recognize it. So remain steady now. Remain open. Remain grounded in the peace that has carried you this far. Because Chosen One, what is meant for you is not arriving late. It is arriving whole. Chosen One. You are not leaving this moment empty-handed. Something in the unseen has already shifted, and heaven does not speak a word like this unless movement has already begun. What you felt stirring in your spirit today is not imagination, it is confirmation. The season that shaped you has completed its work, and the season of recognition is quietly opening before you. Anointed One. This is your Kairos moment, not because emotions are high, but because alignment has been established. Heaven has watched your patience, your restraint, and the quiet faith you carried through seasons when nothing seemed to move. Now, what has been prepared is beginning to approach your life with peace instead of pressure. The partnership being sent to you will not compete with your calling, it will walk beside it. So walk forward with gratitude, remain steady, remain faithful to the peace that has guided you this far. What heaven writes cannot be reversed, and what God aligns cannot be undone. If your spirit bears witness to this word, you may seal it with a simple Amen or 777 in the comments as a quiet declaration of faith. And if you feel led to stay connected for future messages meant for your journey, you are welcome to subscribe so you do not miss what heaven continues to reveal. For those who wish to support this mission and help keep these messages of encouragement reaching others, a small offering through the support link is always received with gratitude. Anointed One, go in peace. What heaven has prepared for you is already on its way.